Hello everyone and welcome to Season 5, Episode 9 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in NXT history with match number 42 on our list, which is the NXT title match between the champion Kevin Owens and the challenger Finn Balor from the March 25th, 2015 edition of NXT. When you think of these two squaring off in the year 2015, you'd maybe expect this to be the ladder match that main evented TakeOver Brooklyn, maybe the title change match at the Beast in the East event in Japan. But this is what I think is quite the hidden gem of a title match, just from a regular weekly NXT episode. This match was shortly after Kevin Owens had won the title from basically steamrolling Sami Zayn at the NXT TakeOver Rival event. At that same show, Finn Balor, who had recently come into NXT at the end of 2014 and had been on a hot streak, he had won the finals of a number one contenders tournament, defeating former champion Adrian Neville in a great match at that same event. That led, Owens and Balor on a collision course. No real feud in place or anything like that, but it led to this big time title match that I think, at the time we all thought was going to be the main event of the next TakeOver, but they gave it away on free TV. And this match it's a classic, and I think it's a really great hidden gem because it's not a match that you ever really hear talked about, especially when it comes to these two guys. And this is a match that, it's going to sound a little weird, but it really feels like an old school title match. And don't get me wrong, it's a match in the new era, so it's got, the big moves and spots and things like that you would expect from these guys. But it's got this really great face versus heel dynamic. It feels like a title match. It's got a big match feel to it. It's got a hot studio crowd, at Full Sail. And it's Kevin Owens feels like this, old kind of, 80s NWA champion, against that territory's hot baby face. That's what this match really feels like. And it's got a really cool vibe to it. And the story that we have here is all about momentum, right? So, it kind of plays into Kevin Owens that, Sami Zayn, had this momentum as the NXT champion and Owens just squashed it. He attacked him after he won the title, destroyed him at TakeOver. Now Finn Balor has all of this momentum coming to him, from winning the number one contenders tournament, and Owens is looking to squash it here, and he does that throughout the match. Finn Balor's a wrestler that really relies on momentum. Once he starts to get going, that's where he really excels, and Owens does whatever he can in this match to just halt that momentum every step of the way. And that's established immediately in this match where, at the bell, Owens bails to the floor. He controls the pace, he stalls, whatever he can to elongate this match, he's going to do it. He's going to try to take Finn into these deep waters that he doesn't think that he's prepared for. And Finn Balor is, the great baby face here. So of course, early on when they eventually do lock up, he kind of muscles Owens into the corner and he breaks clean. But you can't do that against Kevin Owens because the guy's going to take advantage. He's a dirtbag. And, of course, he gets the kick to the gut and he grabs this headlock. And the headlock is the story of this match. And I talked about this in the last video with Hideo Itami and Bobby Roode's match where, we have this idea in our heads of rest holds in wrestling, right? And then they happen. They're natural. But wrestlers can really utilize these moves as part of their story and make it mean more than just, I've been working hard, I need a break. And that's exactly what Owens does in this match. He uses the headlock, such a basic maneuver, but he uses it all throughout the match. And we'll talk more about this headlock as we go, but it's almost reminiscent. Like if you think back, if you're an old Ring of Honor fan, and you think back to the original, Samoa Joe and CM Punk 60-minute draw, and how much of that revolved around a headlock, it tells you just how compelling these moves that we completely write off as modern wrestling fans, can be when used properly. And that's exactly what Owens does here with the headlock. He grinds it, and every time, Balor starts to get a little bit of momentum going, he goes back to this headlock to cut him off. So our first instance of Balor escaping that, and what kind of becomes a go-to theme throughout this match too, is, he's able to finally kind of get Owens off of his head. And they do this, kind of like rope running, almost like a crisscross spot, and Balor blasts him with a big drop kick. And that's where he starts to be able to kind of get that momentum going, and he goes to work on Kevin Owens' arm. He doesn't, get an elongated control sequence on it or anything, but it does kind of start to put those chinks in the armor of, this unstoppable juggernaut that is, Kevin Owens in 2015 NXT. So Balor gets this work on the arm. Owens cuts him off with like a stunner over the ropes. And at this point, Owens is so good at showing that damage, and he sells the arm and like everything he does. Even though it wasn't worked on a long time, he shows that that's his weak point, and that's, something that Balor can kind of go to throughout the match to start getting that momentum back. But what does Owens do? He goes back to the headlock. We get an elongated sequence of that again. They end up out on the floor. Owens teases the apron powerbomb. Balor manages to back body drop him on the floor out of it. Tries to get that momentum going again, goes for a diving crossbody in the ring. Owens catches him, swings him over into the go-home driver, which is an awesome move that, Owens doesn't bust out a ton in WWE, but we do see it from time to time. But what does Owens do? Rather than going for the cover or trying to continue, rolling with his big moves, he goes back to that headlock. He saw that glimpse where he went outside of his game plan by going for that apron powerbomb. It cost him, and it started to get Finn's momentum going, and he had to halt it, and goes back to that headlock, of course. Every time, like I said, Finn tries to start getting momentum, it's a headlock. He'll get a couple strikes, headlock. He'll, counter out of it, back to the headlock. And Finn is so good here too at showing just how it's sapping all of the life out of him, to the point that, Owens like whips him into the buckles, and he bumps off the whip into the buckles. And Kevin Owens is such a great bully here. He's just so unlikable. He's screaming in Finn's face and just being, atrocious to him. And it's funny, I'm recording these videos at the holiday season. I just watched A Christmas Story with my two sons for the first time that they had seen it last night. And there's the part with the bully Scott Farkas where, Ralphie finally stands up to him and, and pounds him into oblivion, basically. And, that's what you want to see with this match. Kevin Owens is Scott Farkas. He's just so unlikable. And I love Kevin Owens as a person. And he's, one of my favorite, wrestlers of all time, I'll say. But he's a piece of garbage in this match, and that's what he needs to be, right? And you just want to see Finn Balor stand up to him like Ralphie does in that movie. Owens, he gets some moves, and he's going for the win. He gets a big overhead belly-to-belly suplex. It only gets him 2. So what does he do? He goes back to that shinlock. And at this point, the crowd, that's been a hot crowd, behind the babyface. They've caught on, to this story with the headlock, and they actually pop when Owens puts the headlock on again at this point, and they kind of get it. It's a little tongue-in-cheek, but it works in the environment, and Owens is great too, milking that headlock for the crowd as well. We get, I talk about that we, have this rope running spot that Finn uses with the drop kick. So there's a point where they kind of do this crisscross spot again, and, rather than Owens run into the drop kick, he kind of, sees it coming in and cuts Finn off with a back elbow and goes back to the headlock, of course. But later on in the match, they go back to this for the third time, and it builds upon all of these spots where, this time Owens knows that Finn's going to come in with that drop kick. So, he's prepared to cut it off with the back elbow. But this time, Balor hangs on to the ropes, and Owens can't really hit anything and goes in for a charge instead, gets back body dropped out to the floor, the back body drop, which worked earlier for Balor. And this is where Balor finally gets that momentum in the match. He hits a big, his big flip dive to the floor, throws Owens back in, hits the double stomp off the top while Owens is like hunched over, which was a really brutal spot. It only gets him 2. He gets the sling blade, he gets the 1916, the reverse brainbuster for 2. But then makes a pivotal mistake. So, he's weak. He's got that momentum going. Owens starts to kind of see his world crumbling, that his title might slip away. But when, Balor makes a pivotal mistake, he goes for the John Woo in the corner. Owens moves. Balor jams up the knee, and Owens smells blood at this point. He knows that this is now his opportunity. He's, weakened and taken Finn out enough with the headlocks that now, he can go to this knee and it's going to win him. And he's brutal on this. He kicks the knee out. He hits a chop block. He's stomping on the knee. He's banging it on the ring post, on the ring apron. His back senton that he hits it on the leg. He locks in a half crab for, a really dramatic, is Finn going to get the ropes, kind of sequence, which he eventually does. But at this point, Finn now, he's weakened. He's hit these, momentum moves. He's kind of used those up. Now he's got a bad wheel. What's he really going to be able to do? And Owens knows that this is his time, that he can hit the powerbomb, the same powerbomb that he used over and over and over again to defeat Sami Zayn to win the title. He goes for it, and in an act of desperation, Finn's able to trip him out and hit the double stomp, while Owens is lying on the mat. But the bad knee means that he can't capitalize on it. Owens goes up to the top, gonna go for his own coup de grace, no pun intended, either the Swanton or, the Miro Salt or whatever he planned on doing. Finn is able to, cut him off with the Enziguri, tries to go up top with him, but takes his time because of the bad knee, falls victim to the big super fisherman's buster. It only gets 2. And I talked about, although this is an old school match in nature, it has those big spots, right? And, at this point, it's still pretty early on in Owens' NXT run. So, these fans hadn't really seen him do that move. So again, they're in awe of it. It's really great stuff. Owens, again, blood in the water, hits the cannonball into the corner, goes back to Finn's knee, actually hooks his leg through the ropes in the corner, hits the cannonball into the knee, which was great. Goes for it one more time, almost makes a pivotal mistake of his own by going to the well once too often, and he misses. This allows Finn to finally hit the John Woo, go up top, and hit the coup de grace. Finn Balor didn't learn. When Finn Balor hit that double stomp on the mat, his knee was so badly banged up he couldn't capitalize, and it allowed Owens to take back over. He hit his big move at the higher elevation off the top rope. Yes, it damaged Owens. He couldn't do anything after it. The knee was too bad. He couldn't even get a near fall off of it, which I loved. And he, at this point, and we talk about this momentum all match long, Finn, he's used to these charges that he does with the John Woo kick and the sling blade and everything like that. He'll run into forearms and things a lot. Doesn't really know what he can do. He goes for the run in, leaves himself completely susceptible to Owens to pop him up into that powerbomb. One and done. All of the energy that's been sapped out of Finn. Owens knew that powerbomb was going to do the match earlier. He was able to hit it out of nowhere. Finn went for the momentum that he no longer had, and it cost him, and it was this pretty little bow on this great story of a match. I love this match. I remembered it fondly when I did this rewatch project. I was excited to watch it again. I remembered, the headlock especially. And I was so happy with how this one held up. It's a great little NXT title match that doesn't get near the recognition of it should. If you've never seen it, I'd definitely give it a watch on Peacock. If you're international, it's available on the WWE Network as well. You can subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so that you never miss a video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50. And please join me again tomorrow as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50.